Шановні колеги-журналісти, один зі спікерів буде говорити англійською. Навушник для синхрону можна взяти в кінці зали. Ви нам свій документ, посвідчення, ми вам навушник, а потім навпаки.
Доброго дня.
Good afternoon, and thank you all who are with us. We are here today to discuss a very important issue, how to overcome a strong barrier which hampers Ukraine to build up modern society. I mean, modern softened version of serfdom, which is called Moratorium on selling agricultural lands. And I suggest let us start from listening to the peasants. Dmitro. No. The peasants who failed to join us today. Dmitro, EasyBusiness. Good afternoon, I'm Dmitro Livcha. I'm the analyst of EasyBusiness organization. First of all, I would like to apologize. Our founder, Daniel Pasko, failed to come here, and I'm sure that we will be able to explain everything to you and to do that in the best possible way. I will start from some background information. The moratorium is the restriction of constitutional rights of 7 million of Ukrainians who receive 20 million hectares of land, but they have no right to effectively use it, dispose of it. People are saying that peasants are against such a reform. Many people are manipulating that, and our team was trying to understand whether the peasants are supporting this reform. And I would like to demonstrate the video on how we talk to common people, to landowners, and what's their position on canceling moratorium and creating the free market, why they support it, why they believe that the decision of the parliament and the president are illegal, and why we need to create the free land market of Ukraine. I would like to draw your attention to this video. Ukraine has 41 million hectares of the land of agricultural use. I have many children, 11 grandchildren. One boy could not talk. He cannot talk. I want to help them to take him somewhere. If they cancel, we can sell something. Since 2001 in Ukraine, there's a moratorium on agricultural land sale. 7 million peasants have 28 million hectares of land. This is the restriction of their constitutional rights. They gave us land here, I've been working in the collective farm. It was like compensation for people working so long in the collective farm. People were happy. They thought that they will be able to dispose of it. We privatized the land, but we cannot sell it because there's no permission. They do not levy the moratorium. If they say the peasants will not buy land because it's expensive, but the peasants have this land. The land is good and the harvest would be great, but we cannot sell it. And all peasants are for it. In case the market is open in Ukraine, then the average batch of land will cost so much. Yes, I've earned that for 10 years nothing was done with this land. We are pensioners, we can do nothing. I have 5 hectares of land. The average cost of the rent is $35. In Poland, it's 10,000 per 1 hectare. I received 5 hectares, and this is what the farmer is leasing. And before that, it was with the collective farm, and the collective farm was not processing it. If there was a law to sell it, I would sell it. When the deputies say, they say that they listen to the farmers, but the farmers say that the land is to be sold. The members of parliament are not interested in open market. Why they are asking farmers, we don't know. This is not the land of the farmers. They should ask the peasants because the peasants have it. We need to have this moratorium cancelled. Then we will sell it because this is the market. Cancel moratorium. We've heard the voice of real Ukrainian peasants, and I would like to give the floor to Konstantyn Dzyuba, and he will explain whether we need to defend these peasants just like the state is defending them, or do we need some other mechanism? The people said everything. That's Boryspil district. I'm from Pukhivka, Brovary district, near Desna River. 633 peasants received these shares of land, 1 hectare, 20 sotkas. And what can you earn on these 20 sotkas? This share is split into 3 pieces. One, 14 sotkas, the next one, 20 sotkas, and the third, 95 sotkas. So 14 sotkas are on the bank of Desna River, and it's been there for 17 years. No one's processing these 14 sotkas, and you cannot sell it. We cannot include them into the village and then change the purpose for what this land could be used. But we went halfway and then we fail to do it. They don't allow us to take it within the village. Now the communities will be merged, and then when we merge, maybe these 14 sotkas, the resource of the peasants, maybe this will become the land in the village. Then these 17 sotkas in the field. What can you do there in the field? Tell me, who's against the market? Give me the answer. What can you do there? The girl in the white dress, tell me, what can be done on 70 sotkas? For example, tell me specifically. No answer. I lease it out. I plant wheat. I took these 70 sotkas. I plant wheat. Then how much wheat will grow there? Okay, we have such a picture in Ukraine. rapeseed, corn seed, sunflower, wheat. All Ukraine is planted with that. In Poltava region, 5 hectares. Maybe that has some sense. But in our situation, I represent our peasants. 14 sotkas have no sense to lease out. And no one will take it, no one will lease it out, because there's a risk to lease it out for 7 years, as the minister suggests this will be the risk. That is why we are for the land market. All the villages of Borispil district and Bravary district are for the land market. Why do you believe that we are full? Tomorrow we'll start selling. Just give the right to do that. Don't take away the right, and the people will decide whether to sell it or not. The Bolsheviks, before Bolsheviks came, before that communist coup, did we have the market of land in Ukraine or not? Before Bolsheviks, did we have the market of land? The land wasn't sold, wasn't bought? Tell me. No one knows. The Bolsheviks came, Simonenko, Morozin said, no, moratorium. I don't understand then this girl in white. I don't understand it. I have a question to you, because you give an example of Poland and you give an example of Israel. So my question is to you. Tell me, in Ukraine, did we have the market of land before your Komsomol and Bolshevik coup? You were not there, okay, you were not. But in mentality you are one of those. Is that the offense? We cannot hear the comments, sorry. The interpreters cannot hear the comments. Don't they have the market of land in England? In England they don't have it? Okay. Then why did they give this land to peasants? What for? I'm sorry, I apologize. The interpreters cannot hear the comments.
Може й був. Підождіть, ви проти ринку землі? Ми про ринок землі з вами говоримо.
Антикомуністична, перепрошую.
Антикомуністична, не комуністична.
I want to ask you, are you for the land market or not? I'm the speaker, I'm a simple speaker. Sorry, this cannot be translated, we do not hear.
Громадян України. Моя така позиція, як усіх людей. Оце все, що хочу тепер сказати, щоб не без образ, без нічого.
So what I want to say, this violates the rights of citizens of Ukraine, of peasants. Or am I not saying the truth? According to the Constitution, is that the private property? Do we violate the constitutional rights? Okay, it's not the discussion. Once you're not answering, then keep silence. I told you what my position is. Pukhivka village has such shares of land and we want to sell it. No one's processing this land. Nothing is done there. And it looks like we found out that we can write a letter to the European Court, we'll write it, and we will get an answer. Maybe the European Court will say that our rights are violated, or maybe they're not violated. It's interesting. And those people who spoke from Borispil district, I think like they do. And people from my village think like they do. That's all I wanted to share.
Okay, you will have a chance to continue your discussion after all the panelists. And now I would like to give the floor to Anatoliy Miroshnichenko, who will describe the societal barriers which this moratorium creates for people. I agree with the statement which we heard today that although the moratorium is passed, but it is not lawful, it does not comply with the Human Rights Convention, more specifically, it does not comply with Article 1st of Protocol 1, and it conflicts with the cases and decisions of the Court of Human Rights decisions. For example, on May 4th this year, the decision of the Human Rights Court were published, and there was official statement that the case filed to this court about moratorium on land sales is taken for court proceedings. We have heard the figure of 7 million of land plot owners, but actually later the state had deprived people from all rights in respect of that land. Now people cannot sell these land plots, and it looks like all the owners are interested just in selling. Let's try to understand whether it's true. In Ukraine, the average size of land plot is at the level of 4.5 hectares. Of course, a farmer cannot process this land alone. Also, he is unable, obviously, to process this land by his or her hands. So he has to hire some machinery, especially when these owners are elderly people. So the only way out is to sell this land, or maybe to rent it. And when there is a ban on land sales, then of course the rent price goes down. Thus, those landowners who had been renting this land for 15 almost years, they found out that they lost significant amounts of money which accumulated during all these years. So if we wish not to move in direction to the northern Korea, we should think carefully. Why do we limit the rights of people without any reasonable explanation? So this makes for me easier to say that I oppose the moratorium. The Rada had extended the moratorium through January 1st, 2018. Unfortunately, as of today, this moratorium is unlimited. It in line with our legislation, the moratorium should last till the special law on the lands designation and circulation will be passed. So actually, the owners of land remain in uncertainty. The moratorium had been being extended for many years from the year 2001, and unfortunately, this provision, which had to be temporary, it now had become the permanent thing. Some people say that we do not have any legislation ready for the cancellation of the moratorium. And people and some MPs say that we lack special procedural legislation about assignment of the land designation. And when, as a lawyer, I ask the question, what do we lack except cancellation of Section 1, Article 2 of the moratorium? There is no other legislation. In Ukraine, we have all markets of all sorts of real estate, and agricultural lands are also real estate property, and of course they can be protected by the state, but actually we have all legislation in place which is designed to rule the market of the real estate property. So when there is a question whether moratorium conflicts with the convention and with the Human Rights Convention and Constitution, even if to put aside this question, for me the grounds and explanations provided by the supporters of moratorium are not convincing, and I believe that any moratoria are not ethical. You cannot say that half of population are very stupid and they could not be given the right to use their property as they wish. So on the one hand, the person is able to dispose its flat or its house, but they have no right to make a disposal of their lands. And that lady who said that people gain that land due to their long years of service in collective farms, and you may now judge whether that reform was wise or not, whether the procedure of granting land was wise or not. But having done this, you cannot prohibit to dispose this land.
This is a very important aspect. Who's compensating the losses to Ukrainian peasants? Those who are for the moratorium, I would like to say that most of them are sincere, because with many of them, one more thing, who will compensate these losses? On the 4th of May, they communicated first 5 applications, and the figure of potential applicants was 7 million. We understand that if the European Court recognizes that there's a violation, there was some damage caused, there is some damage. And then I believe that there's no doubt in that. And who will, if the state takes it to the situation when people in mass will start sending application to the European Court and the decisions will be made, then my question is who will compensate? There is a mechanism. It's not just a rhetorical question. The question is correct. We are potentially talking about 7 million applicants and even a few €100 per applicant, but who will compensate all that money? Those who are suggesting to continue the moratorium should give an answer to that.
Journalists Ivan Miklosh. I think that Ivan doesn't need any introducing. Nevertheless, Ivan was an author or co-author of very successful and deep structural reforms in Slovakia. And now Ivan advises the Prime Minister of Ukraine, Volodymyr Groysman. And to begin with, I want to ask you a very straightforward question. You know that the pledge to lift the moratorium on selling agrarian lands is among pledges of this government, and as we can see, this pledge isn't fulfilled. So how would you comment on this?
Thank you. Okay, I will start answer your question. This is problem, not only land market liberalization, but also other reform measures. The biggest problem is not what to do, even not how to do, I mean, in content, but mechanism, implement this, prepare and really implement. It's not only about land market. Let me illustrate. Last year in December, government passed the action plan for improving the position of Ukraine in doing business. There were dozens of measures. Now everything, all measures expired. Only 13% of measures were really passed. Action plan of the government, which is very good, was prepared and implemented and passed in May of this year. For the first quarter, 2 quarters, only 34% of measures which expired were really fulfilled. 2015, Parliament passed only 37% of government legislative proposals, and we can expect that almost all of these, or majority of these legislative proposals were pro-reform, which means we have not only here, but in general, this problem. Not what to do, but how to do, and how to really implement. Regarding land market, it was IMF benchmark. It was in the IMF program, and the deadline was September. Was new law, which allow, as you said, to liberalize or to cancel moratorium, because it is necessary to have law which will explain in which conditions it will be done. Despite it was IMF benchmark, this law was not prepared. Ministry said they are working on something which will be based on transferability of lease rights, which is not a real market. And this is what we are working now on, how to create mechanisms which will improve these very poor and inefficient, insufficient results in implementing reforms, in fulfilling what is correctly written in all documents. We have a lot of documents and everything is written there, what is necessary to do, but problem is how to do this. Let me say a few words about this land moratorium. I have to say that when for the first time I heard that it was from the 2001, there is 7 million owners of land, and they cannot do anything with this land, just rent it almost free of charge to big entrepreneurs. I couldn't believe on this. I couldn't believe, because this is absurd, this is abnormal, this is immoral, This is illegal. This is unconstitutional. It is against everything. It is really impossible to understand. I still cannot understand this. But okay, we have it. And I don't believe, by the way, because I have read some public opinion polls that, where is it? That majority of owners are against the selling the land. I don't believe that it is correct, but you have this kind of public opinion polls, but we have seen also, I don't know what is representative, what not, but at least it is against normal thinking that they are against. But, okay, let's speak about why it is the problem. And let me start from broader perspective. When Soviet Union collapsed, it was Deutsche Bank did a very broad analysis which country has the best chance to be the most successful. I mean, former Soviet Union countries. And Ukraine was on the first place. They said Ukraine has the best potential to be the most developed. What is the result now? One of the reasons is this. Let's simple comparison of the three countries, Ukraine, Belarus, and Poland. Because these three countries have had the same GDP per capita, approximately the same 25 years ago. Where Poland is now, where Belarus is, and where Ukraine is. Even comparison between Ukraine and Belarus will tell you something. Poland, of course, Poland built functioning market economy, integrated itself, and today in Poland, average salary is 1,000 euro. In Ukraine, it is 170, 180 euro. But why? How is it possible that even Belarus has higher economic level? In Belarus, the command economy was not destroyed fully. Just business and free market is just for small entrepreneurs, but command economy is still sustained. In Ukraine, fortunately, old system was destroyed, but unfortunately, not new functioning system of market economy based on institutional framework for market economy and free and fair market, an open market. This was not constructed, and what was done here was it was created dysfunctional, corrupted, oligarchic system without rules. And I cannot say without market, because you have market. Even you have market with the land today. Because even if there is overregulation, it is market. But it is black market, shadow market, and hidden market. It is market. But it is market from which economy is not profiting, people are not profiting, just few people are profiting. And this is the point. Which means we have, and a land market is a good example for this. The biggest problem of Ukraine still is that we have, in economists know the term rent-seeking behavior and the rent-seeking system and profit-seeking behavior, profit-seeking system. Rent-seeking is if somebody has such behavior that it is trying to gain income from privileges, connections, misusing power, misusing economic, political power, misusing judiciary system, which means by this kind of activities. Profit-seeking behavior is the competition on the free and fair and open market. This is exactly what we have. And problem is that in Ukraine, 25 years ago, more than 20 years, it was constructed system based mainly on the rent-seeking behavior. And you can see difference because you have areas in which profit-seeking behavior works in Ukraine. Restaurants, taxi services are better in Ukraine, in Kiev, than in Bratislava. Because it is profit-seeking system. Because there's free and fair competition on the open market between private owners and private businesses. But every area in which there is interference of the state, every area which is overregulated, every area which doesn't have these clear rules and free and fair competition and open competition is creating, on the contrary, huge corruption, huge deformations, no restructuring, no modernization, bad services for the people. Land market is the same, which means you have huge potential by estimates of the World Bank. If land market is open in Ukraine, it can have immediate yearly effect for Ukrainian economy in amount $1.5 billion in form of additional investment, local revenues, and landowners' incomes. Which means it is simply necessary to do, because without this, because it is one of the most important assets for the development of the Ukrainian society. Of course that it is necessary to have rules. Of course that if there are public fears that foreigners will come and they will buy it and so on, if there are fears that oligarchs will buy now everything and will create monopolistic structures, it is possible to solve this by temporary, or if you want, long-term limitations and rules. What we did in Slovakia, for instance, because it was also sensitive, and it is a sensitive issue in every country, we created rules that only for foreigners, they could buy land, but they had to create legal company in Slovakia, and then this legal company could buy land. For the physical persons, we had 10 years period, 10 years moratorium. This 10 years moratorium expired 2 years ago and nothing happened. After 12 years of possibility to buy land by foreigners, by legal persons, and now also by physical persons, still in foreigners' ownership is only from 5 to 7%, approximately 5-7% of Slovakian land. And all other countries, almost all other countries, liberalized this market, and the effect was development, growth, and investment. And of course that it is necessary to speak with people, it is necessary to explain people. More than 1 year ago I came to the airport, and taxi driver, when I said to the taxi, he was listening radio, and he said, I don't agree with this. I asked him, what do you don't agree? And he said, President just said that we will have to liberalize land market, and I don't agree with this. And then I asked him why, and then we discussed 30 minutes, 35, until we came to the airport. And he said, I'm from countryside, I know it is a very bad situation there, it is no investment, and so on and so on. And then we discussed, and I explained him why it is. I asked him what foreigners will do if they will buy, even if you will allow foreigners. It is not necessary, but even if you will allow foreigners to buy the land, what they will do with this land? Will they take this land and remove to Norway or what they will do? No, but he said, but they want to have profit from this. I said, okay, and to have profit from this, what they will have to do? He said, what? They will have to invest. Okay, and if they will invest, what it will mean? They will bring money. Okay, if they will bring money, it will be developed the countryside or not? Because he said, now everything is destroyed, even what was built during communism is destroying, people are leaving from countryside, and so on and so on. But of course, open market with the land means open market for investment, for development, for growth. For those people for those 7 million people, it is possible to use this land as collateral in the bank and to take loan and to start small business. For them, it is possible to join in some mid-sized farm, for instance, few farmers, and then they can start their business. Which means it is really, for me, still very difficult to understand why 15 years ago you have more than 15 years, 7 million owners, and they cannot to do with this land anything. But to be now the government, at least I can say, I spoke about this with the Prime Minister, he is not against the liberalization. What was the problem? As I said, that a law was not prepared. Law which will allow to do it, which will put conditions in which it can be done. What we did, we are just now creating a working group where people from Ministry of Agriculture, people from Kabmin Secretariat, people from World Bank, and Ukrainian experts, because you have a lot of very nice experts. We met people from academies of science, from who are prepared, who know everything, who are proposing very nice measures, how to do it, how to avoid the risk of corruption, how to implement electronic system on this, how to have it transparent, open, and so on, so on. Which means I hope that this working group will prepare proposal for how to do it, for proposal for new law, which will allow them, Parliament, to really finally cancel this moratorium, because this moratorium is really nonsense. It is not only against these 7 million people, it is against Ukraine, it is against successful Ukrainian future, because this land is really the biggest asset for developing all the country.
Thank you, Ivan. Я хотів би повернути слово до
Thank you, Ivan. I would like to give the floor to Dmytro Livch, who will explain about free land markets. I will start from some background. Why we have analyzed international experience. Today we have heard very good arguments in favor of cancellation of the moratorium, and Ivan described the experience from Slovakia, from other countries of Europe. Anatoliy described the aspects in legal area, but nevertheless, the skepticism about moratorium cancellation quite often argue that and say that there are moratoria in other countries, that the market there is limited, etc. So we have decided to analyze 193 countries and compiled a big database about market development, about regional profiles of the analyzed countries. And we found out that not all the countries are similar to Ukraine. That's why we have first created the filter and to select those countries which are similar, to be able to understand which conditions are close to our. So the first filter was based on the international ratings, global competitiveness, doing business, and some others. The second conditions was arable land, percentage of arable lands, and agri-farm worker, agri-land plot per worker. And based on those criteria, pre-selected criteria, we have selected 60 countries which were united in 8 regional groups, and had analyzed them carefully, created the profile of each country, and traced how the value of land plot, the added value per one worker, and some other indicators, how they correlate in those countries. Nevertheless, we again believe that that analysis was absolutely precise, absolutely objective. So we decided to compare the land markets and the way of reforming, of land reforming in that countries. So this allowed us to design 3 questions: whether there is a private property on land. If not, then this is a country with a closed land market. There is only one such country, Tajikistan. But when we ask the question whether foreigners can buy land or whether the lands can be objects of international circulation, we immediately found that there are countries which are land markets closed for foreigners. All the rest countries appeared to be opened with limitations or totally opened. Opened with limitations suggests that there are limitations in terms of price, in terms of value, in terms of size of the land, etc. The countries which were categorized as countries without limits, they were characterized as countries with open land market. Why it was done this way? To find the more objective model and to understand the land reforms in different types of markets. This slide provides comparison of land prices in different types of markets. For example, in closed markets, it's $25,000 per hectare. In partially limited markets, this is up to $10,000 per hectare, and in totally opened markets, the land price is at the level of $4,000 per land. Also, some skeptics used to say that the low lease price is not result of moratorium, but we found out that it is, having compared this with similar markets. So we can definitely say that the lease price in Ukraine or rent price in Ukraine is much lower than in opened markets. We cannot hear, unfortunately, remarks from the audience. Could not be heard by translators. Our analytical report will be available for audience. At the end of presentation, I will show you the website. So the countries with open land market are the most successful. They have the biggest added value in the agro sector. Thus, we found out that the most useful is the open land market. Also, we had analyzed scenarios which might happen in case of moratorium cancellation. The first scenario was preservation of status quo, and the maximum could be up to 24 billion earnings. The second scenario was limited access of foreigners to the land market. So that is partially opened market, and in this case there will be 41.6 GDP growth. So the cumulative effect will be up to $41 billion. The next scenario is opened with limitations. That is when foreigners will have the right to buy agricultural lands, but with some limitations, and the effect will be up to almost 60 billion of GDP growth and up to almost 100 billion of GDP growth would be the totally liberal land market. This assumption was based on current Ukrainian methodology, and we expect that Ukraine would earn $100 billion of GDP growth. What are our key conclusions? Number one, the more the market is liberalized, the more the better outcomes it brings for the country. Then, in the next conclusion is that we are able to get 100 billion of GDP growth in result of market liberalization. And the third conclusion is that the experience of other similar countries proves that open land market will not just bring GDP growth, but stimulate FDI and domestic investments and bring additional tax revenues to the central and local budgets. And with this, I would like to advertise our materials here in this book, and here you can find our predictions for the next 10 years for Ukrainian economic development, depending on the scenarios which I described. You may register on our website and get access to this publication. I would like also to develop more about the situation with the Human Rights Court. We have a farmer in UAE website where farmers can find how to defend their civil rights. So I would like to mention that the land sales moratorium is non-constitutional. And I would like to remind you once again that the moratorium has, and the land market has legal aspects, how the land use may be liberalized. The second is economic aspect, that is up to 100 billion GDP growth. And the third is general outcome for the country, which raises its economic potential considerably. Thank you very much. We heard today that the situation which we have in our land use and agriculture is beneficial only for bureaucrats, for prosecutors, for oligarchs, maybe. I would like to know opinion of businesses. what the market liberalization may entail. And I would like to give the floor to Taras Berezovsky, who is representing Ukrainian market of agrarian business.
Good afternoon, dear participants of the press conference. I see now many questions. I will be very brief. I would like to mention two things which are important for business and the society. We understand that the agrarian agricultural sector is the only hope of our economy and the society. We are looking at the indicators that the agricultural sector demonstrates. We see that they are not bad, but they are not moving anywhere. The agricultural market is asking maximum what we can get from the strategy today. For today, we have received it. To move forward, to develop the sector, we need to invest. We need to invest into the projects today for today. Not into such projects, but in long-term projects. And when all the agricultural sector is tied up to the land as a resource, no one will invest long-term if they're not sure in whether this resource is available for the business. So first of all, passing moratorium, and moratorium is freezing the situation, means that next year, if the weather is good, then the same will be, we'll get 60+ million. If the weather is bad, then we don't want to talk about negative. We hope that the weather will be good and will move forward. Because without investments, there will be no projects like that. And without the rules of game in the market, such projects as others, the logic is clear. If we are happy with this, then it's perfect. Moratorium is something, but why the business gets angry? Because this is just a very good thing, moratorium, for those who have if the situation was like that, there were 4 million of land registered, 1 million is somewhere.
Є земля, яка є власність.
There is a land which is the property of people, but it's not people who receive the profit or income. No taxes are paid, the rent is received, it's split, and everything's fine. And eventually, according to some assessments, this could go up to 400-500 million a year. And that's again the money which should go to technologies, because we've seen that they don't go to technologies. The whole society is talking about that. Business understands, it looks long-term. They understand that the competitive advantages of Ukraine are different. For 10 years, if we have the same situation, we will not be competitive in foreign markets. If we leave 70% of export here, then business will have nothing to do. It is important. It's not just whether this is so important again for the sector to be competitive. The business wants to be competitive. For that, we need to make changes. Second, so that there's no corruption. There should be no corruption, and the money should be invested back into the business. There are answers to the questions. Mr. Miklosh said correctly. There are many experts in Ukraine who understand what's needed, what has to be done. There are answers, but there's no desire to do it.
З нашої точки зору, основне зараз можливість це
The only chance is to communicate to the society, to people. Where is white, where is black, so that they understand. And to give an objective, not to allow further discussion.
More quickly, that the locomotives which are now used, and we will get nothing. And Kateryna Glazkova, Executive Director of the Association of Ukrainian Entrepreneurs, you have 3 minutes. Thank you for invitation to this discussion. I will say just one thing. Do we have people who oppose the moratorium? I think for today's discussion we lack the opponents. We all believe that the market should be liberalized, and we do not have the opponents here to hear their opinion today, because our association unanimously believes that the market should be liberalized. I think we not just declared this many times, we just wrote this many times. Let us do something now. I agree with my colleagues that we should do something with the shadow land market. Our assumption is that the corruption schemes in the land market area amount to $1 billion. And this is absolutely needed to raise investment to the country. And last week here in the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center, I made my interventions and said that we should do something with the agricultural lands. Do not think that village residents, that farmers will immediately sell this land for nothing. But what do we lack to cancel this moratorium or to pass the necessary piece of legislation? I think we lack political will, including MPs. Of course, lawyers can draft any draft law, any bill, but we drastically need the will, political will. And why there are so strong opponents of the moratorium cancellation? Because for years we have been hearing that this will be harmful for the country, while we are not sure that this will be that bad. And one of the main objectives of our today discussion is to send this message to people that let us do something and move forward. Very briefly, this is my position. There is one more idea about electronic declarations. We have seen how much cash our MPs have. It would be very good to see who are the biggest landowners among our bureaucrats, public figures, MPs, etc. Now we have time for Q&A session. Please mention your name and then ask your questions. Translators cannot hear. Please repeat. Now we are discussing the land sale moratorium. And we forget about both sides. I think the seller and the buyer, we should impose moratorium for buying land. We have a lot of weapon in hands of people, but they cannot sell it because it is prohibited to buy weapons. The limited market or partially liberal market, it does not matter. The most efficient agriculture in European countries are in Denmark, but in Denmark they have rather tough limitations on the land market. Anybody wishes to comment on this? This is a rather popular position that moratorium should be removed, but the circulation of agricultural lands should be very much limited. Foreigners should not be allowed to buy them. The use should be limited somehow, etc.
I don't share that idea. We need to remember what happened to land in Ukraine as the result of the reform. Agricultural lands are divided into small pieces, 4 hectares each. And it is difficult to create some sustainable company based on 4 hectares. Any economy requires dynamic turnover of land, and limitations could be imposed when we know what this is done for. Ukraine requires very dynamic turnover of land, so any limitations are harmful. And the arguments to justify the schemes used in the Western Europe, like in Denmark, France, and other countries, in order to simplify the life or preserve the class of family farmers. For us, such limitations are not needed, and just to mechanically copy them would be very harmful. We don't have the class of family farmers. Our task is now to create such class of farmers, and limitations on land market is not the instrument that should be used for that. As to calling it different name, as a lawyer, I am always respecting the form, but whatever you call it, but if there's no ownership right, that's interference into ownership right. So basically, such interference is harmful and not constitutional. Association of Private Landowners. My question is to Anatoliy Miroshnichenko. This notion of the law, is it absolute? And was there the decision of the Constitutional Court which identify the violation of human rights of citizens in the sphere of land turnover? Classification of rights is very complicated, and I'm not sure what you mean by absolute rights. This classification of rights and material are absolute. The word absolute is used with a certain sense, which is different from common language sense. The rights could be limited. Do you mean that? Yes, the rights could be limited. Article 1 of Protocol 1 of the Convention and Article 41 of the Constitution allow the interference into ownership right. But if it's about interference with ownership right, the Constitution says very strictly it allows the mandatory alienation of the ownership right as an exception on condition of the preliminary reimbursement. But if you say to the person, we did not take your right away, but then still there's a question about application of Article 41. But as to Article 1 of Protocol 1, it's even simpler. There are practices of European courts how to understand this article, how to use it. Interference should be done for some purpose. It should be based on the law. We can say that there was a law, but interference should be proportional. As a rule, interference without any reimbursement is considered to be the violation of the convention. And that's what I meant when I said that Article 1 of Protocol 1 was violated. Your second question was about the rulings of the Constitutional Court. I understand it's not the question, it's a hint. You want to say that our moratorium is non-constitutional, but the Constitution is a law of direct law, and the Constitution could be applied irrespective of what the court says. Yes.
To Mr. Miklosh, and it's about the question, because Ukraine is receiving now a lot of financing from the European Union and also from other taxpayers' money in the world, and you are also a leading politician in your own country, in the Slovak Republic, how to really explain the voters in the European Union that we put so much money into Ukraine at the moment, when such kind of laws and such kind of really very strong violation of human rights are then reiterated and continue to exist under this kind of conditions when we are financing so much here. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, of course it has also this consequence that is very difficult to explain why this kind of law which is violating everything is, or this kind of mechanism which is violating everything is prolonged. But it is possible to explain, I mean, by limited capacity of the government, also the lack of leadership, also the lack of communication. As a result of the lack of communication in the past, still many people are under influence of the, let's say, opinions which are led by vested interests who are profiting from this situation. But much more important is that I'm still optimist, which means I'm speaking with European leaders, and this is the topic. What was mentioned, it is the topic. Then they're asking, is Ukraine really doing reforms if this kind of moratorium was prolonged? But my explanation on my position is, yes, it is doing. Still, Ukraine, for the first time in the history, is changing the system. Slower than possible, slower than necessary. This is example that it could go quicker. But I have to say, and this is true, that for the first time Ukraine is moving, still is moving ahead. But this is good example to improve and even speeding up the process. And I think Europeans understand this, but this is about communication. As it was very correctly mentioned by my colleague, it is necessary to communicate not only inside Ukraine, but also outside. Because, you know, only bad news is news for the normal media. Which means it was mentioned, it was published in Western media that moratorium was prolonged. But good news, like for instance, I'm afraid even Ukrainians don't know that from October 1st, the price liberalization was done. Which means there were a lot of prices which were formally regulated before. I'm not speaking now about tariffs. I'm speaking about other goods and services regulation. It was liberalized, but of course it was not in media in the Western Europe, which means it is also reason why positive, active communication, not only here in Europe, in Ukraine, but also outside, is very important.
І останнє питання, будь ласка.
Last question. We have only 3 minutes. The project on reform of agriculture, World Bank project, a little technical question about economic effect if moratorium is cancelled. If I understand it correctly, in your slide, Dmitro, the main assumption is that the share of land which is in turnover is 15–17%. Cannot hear in 10 years. We cannot hear without the mic. First year, there's a survey of the World Bank that shows that the share of land in turnover could be up to 1–2%. Then, okay, I understand. Every year it could be from 1.5 to 2%, and cumulative it could be up to 20%, but not more. Very quickly.
You understand Russian, so I can ask in Russian. Okay. Роман Рубченко, просто активный гражданин.
An active citizen of Ukraine. In all discussions on moratorium, you look only at two sides, buyer and seller, but you do not take into account the interest of those people who work with land for 10–15 years. These are small plants which have 500 or 2,000 hectares. They process the land. If the moratorium is cancelled, are there any mechanism which will protect the interests of those people who invested so much work into that? The declaration showed that there's a lot of cash. We don't have the question, is the mechanism of protection of such people who, they have a lot of money and they can buy this land from them. Well, they lease it out and they have the priority right, and also the change of the owner does not allow to change other relations. If he's been leasing it, if he leased it for 15 years, he can continue working on this land. Officially, they are protected, that at certain moment they will not be taken, it will not be taken away from them. And also the ministry says that they will be increasing their support and financially support small ones so that they can become active participants of the market via different programs that discussed. Small and medium size will continue so that we don't have 20 large companies. In the end, I would like to say that the owners of these small plants for 15 years were receiving huge subsidies because they were leasing the land much cheaper than they had to pay in normal market conditions. Thank you all for good questions, for perfect presentation. Thank you. See you again.